Before sunrise on the 29th of May, 1453, a wall that had stopped every army on earth for 1,000 years is shaking. Not from horses, not from battering rams, from cannon. A weapon the men who built this wall never imagined. Inside stands a city the world believed could not fall. It had outlasted Huns, Persians, Arabs, plague, fire, and betrayal. It was the last living piece of the Roman Empire, still calling itself Rome, still breathing 1,000 years after Rome itself collapsed into ruin. Tonight, the question is no longer whether this city is glorious. The question is whether an empire can die twice. This is Constantinople, the queen of cities, at the height of her glory and on the edge of her end. To understand the fall, begin with the choice. In the year 330, the Emperor Constantine took an old Greek town called Byzantium and made it the capital of the Roman world. The location was almost unfair. Europe on one side, Asia on the other, the Bosporus guarding the gate to the Black Sea, a deep natural harbor called the Golden Horn, water on 3 sides and walls on the 4th. From here, an emperor could tax every passing ship, move armies between continents, and sit at the hinge of the world. He named it New Rome, though later historians would saddle it with a different name. This was not a romantic gesture. It was strategy carved in stone, and it would hold the center of the world for 11 centuries. Now go to the landward edge of the city, and you meet the reason Constantinople seemed almost supernatural. The walls of Theodosius. Not a wall, a machine. A wide moat, then a killing ground, then an outer wall, then a great inner wall 40 feet high and studded with 96 towers. Break one line and another waited behind it. Built in the early 5th century, this system shielded the city for 1,000 years. But let's kill the myth honestly. The walls were not magically never breached. Earthquakes cracked them. Politics opened gates. The sea walls had weaker days. Yet against traditional siege warfare, no fortification on earth ever performed better. Armies did not simply attack these walls. Armies grew old and died in front of them. Imagine you arrive as an outsider, a Norse warrior come to join the emperor's Varangian guard. You grew up in a village of 200 souls. Now a mountain of stone rises out of the sea. You pass through the gate, and the city does not greet you with silence. It hits you with sound. Hooves on stone. Merchants shouting in Greek, Latin, Armenian, Syriac, Arabic. You smell fish, incense, bread, wet rope, and the sea. 500,000 people live here, at a time when Paris and London are muddy towns of a few thousand. Water runs through aqueducts into vast cisterns hidden beneath the streets. In one narrow lane, you pass a silk merchant, a palace guard, a beggar, and a priest. Here, empire is not an idea. It is traffic. And then you step inside Hagia Sophia, and the city vanishes. The air cools. Your footsteps fall silent. Above you, a dome 100 feet wide seems to hang from heaven on a golden chain, floating not on stone, but on a ring of light. Acres of gold mosaic drink the lamplight until the whole space glows. It was built in just 5 years, finished in 537 under the Emperor Justinian. Tradition says he walked in, looked up, and whispered, "Solomon, I have surpassed you." We cannot prove the words, but we understand the legend. For 900 years, this was the largest enclosed space on Earth. A message written in golden geometry. Rome had not died. Rome had been baptized and lifted a cross above the skyline. But the city's deadliest secret was not stone, it was fire. Liquid fire. Around the year 670, an Arab fleet came to end Constantinople for good. The Romans answered with a weapon out of a nightmare. And let's be honest about what it was. Not magic, but a guarded weapon system. A combustible liquid, trained crews, and bronze siphons mounted on the prows of their ships, spraying flame that caught a light on contact with water and could not be put out. It clung to wood and to flesh, and it burned on the surface of the sea itself. Enemy sailors faced an impossible choice: stay aboard a burning ship or leap into a sea that was also on fire. The fleet was annihilated. The formula was a state secret, guarded so jealously that, to this day, No one knows exactly how Greek fire was made. Now picture the hippodrome on race day. Tens of thousands packed into the stands, chariots exploding from the gates, wheels close enough to death that the crowd can feel it. But this stadium was never only sport. The city split into two fanatical factions, the Blues and the Greens, street identities, political machines. In 532, a dispute here ignited years of resentment into the Nika Revolt. Half the city burned. Justinian, paralyzed, prepared to flee by ship until his empress, Theodora, a former actress, told him that imperial purple made a fine burial shroud. He stayed. His generals trapped the rioters in the hippodrome and killed perhaps 30,000. And around the track stood monuments looted from older worlds, including 4 bronze horses whose theft, centuries later, would mark the city's first death. Here we break the biggest myth of all. Travel to the year 1000, stop a citizen in the street, and ask what it's like to live in Byzantium, and they would stare at you, baffled. They had never heard the word. They called themselves Romaioi, Romans. Their state was the Basileia Romaion, the Roman Empire. The label Byzantine was invented by Western European scholars a full century after the city had fallen, partly to deny these Greek-speaking Christians their claim to Rome. But they were not a strange medieval offshoot. They were the direct, unbroken continuation of the empire of Augustus and Caesar. The same state, the same title, simply moved east and clothed in gold and orthodoxy. This was the empire at its height, and it ruled by wonder as much as by force. An ambassador granted an audience would be led through halls of gold to the throne. Beside it stood a golden tree filled with golden birds that sang. At its foot, golden lions that beat the floor with their tails and roared. He would bow to the ground and rise to find the entire throne lifted toward the ceiling, the emperor now high above him in imperial purple. But behind the theater stood something stronger, the gold bezant, trusted from Britain to India, the dollar of the Middle Ages, and an empire of tax rolls, grain fleets, diplomacy, and spies. In quiet monasteries, monks copied Plato and Homer, keeping the ancient world alive. Wounded, arrogant, brilliant, holy, theatrical. To the people inside it, this never felt like a remnant. It felt like the center of the world. And then, in 1204, the unthinkable. And not from an enemy of the faith. A crusader army, sworn to fight in the Holy Land, ran out of money. Steered by the gold of Venice, they turned their swords instead on the greatest Christian city on earth. They breached the seawalls, and for 3 days they sacked Constantinople. They stripped the gold from the churches. They smashed tombs for jewels. They hauled those 4 bronze horses off the hippodrome and shipped them to Venice, where they stand to this day. The city was gutted by its own religion. Constantinople would be retaken 57 years later, but it would never, ever be whole again. This was the first death. The second was still 2 centuries away. The Constantinople of the final centuries was a city haunted by its own ghost. The Great Walls still stood, but inside them now lay fields, vineyards, and orchards, growing in the empty spaces where whole neighborhoods had been. A city built for 500,000 held barely 50,000. The treasury was so empty that the emperors set glass and lead in their crowns where jewels had been, the real ones pawned to Venice. The empire had shrunk to little more than the city itself, ringed on every side by the rising power of the Ottoman Turks. The Romans of Constantinople could see the end coming from their own walls. They simply had no army left to stop it. In the spring of 1453, the end arrived in person. By now, Constantinople's name was greater than its resources. Still legendary, no longer gigantic. His name was Mehmed II, 21 years old, and certain that he was born to take the city. He came with perhaps 80,000 men against fewer than 8,000 defenders, Romans and Genoese volunteers fighting side by side. But his true weapon was new to the world: gunpowder on an industrial scale. He had commissioned a monstrous bronze cannon, 27 feet long, that hurled a stone ball weighing half a ton over a mile. The walls that had laughed at 1,000 armies were built for arrows and battering rams. They had never met anything like this. For the first time in 1,000 years, the walls of Theodosius could be broken. For 53 days, the great cannon pounded the walls, and every night the defenders rebuilt by torchlight what the day had smashed. Mehmed dragged his ships overland on greased logs to slip past the harbor chain. The defenders were exhausted, outnumbered 10-1, and alone. No help came from the west. Before dawn on the 29th of May, the final assault broke through. The last emperor, Constantine XI, tore off his imperial insignia so that he would die not as a sovereign but as a common soldier, and charged into the breach. His body was never found, and that uncertainty matters. It leaves him suspended between record and legend, the last emperor vanishing at the very moment his empire does. By sunrise, the banners on the towers were Ottoman. The Roman Empire, 1,500 years old, was over. The city that could not fall had fallen. That same day, Mehmed rode to Hagia Sophia. He dismounted, poured a handful of earth over his head in humility before God, and walked into the church that had stood for 900 years. It became a mosque. The city in time became Istanbul, the dazzling heart of a new empire. And the shock of its fall pushed Europe's sailors to seek new roads to the east, away from Ottoman control, roads that would soon stumble onto a new world. This was not simply the loss of a city, it was the closing of a 1,000-year Roman afterlife. But stand on those broken walls today, and you can still trace the ghost of the greatest city of the medieval world, the city the world could not take until the world itself changed. Next time we travel to a city that fell not to an army, but to the sky, buried alive in a single afternoon, under a rain of fire and ash, Pompeii.